Hey everyone, and welcome to my very first Facebook Family Paranormal Phenomenon video. My name is Ebony Amber. I'm a mother of 3 boys, and I basically love anything creative, from costume design to cosplay to jewelry making, and I'm currently working on a novel. But today I want to talk about something else I'm interested in, and that is the paranormal, because my favorite kind of normal is the paranormal. If you're anything like me, you scour the internet for anything that has to do with ghosts or aliens or reincarnation or psychic phenomena or anything that has to do with that kind of stuff, intermixed with some murder mysteries here and there. However, because of this fascination, I found that I was exhausting the material I had available to me on the internet. So I decided to reach out to people that I actually interact with on a regular basis. Utilizing the electrical dimension of Facebook, I put out a post asking if anybody had their own personal paranormal phenomenon experience that they would like to share. And unsurprisingly, I got a big response. I'm really looking forward to sharing the 4 videos I have for you today to kick off the Paranormal Phenomenon series that I'm working on, because they are really fascinating. Each is super unique, and I just feel it's important for people to share these types of experiences. To start off, I'm actually going to share my own personal paranormal experience, which happened around the year 2004 or 2005 when I was about 21 years old. At that time, I was actually living with my mother, but she was not home. So I was sleeping in a house by myself in the dark. And if you're anything like me and are into this spooky stuff, sleeping in a dark, empty house is not my favorite thing to do. On this particular night, it actually wasn't that super dark because it must have been a full moon or something, because I remember there being a lot of light coming in the window. So my room wasn't like pitch black or anything. There was definitely like this blue moonlight in the atmosphere. After tossing and turning for quite a while, I rolled over onto my side, and from the corner of my eye, I saw something emerging from the shadows that were on my wall across from my bed. So I kind of leaned over and looked closer, and as I did, what appeared to be coming from the shadows was a gnome. Yeah, like a pointed hat, bearded gnome, but he was all like gray and black, as if he was made of shadows. The unique thing about him, besides the fact that he wasn't in color, was that he had like this little drum that was around his neck, and he was sort of like going like this. And he was about 2 feet tall or something like that. And I leaned forward to get a better look, because as you would imagine, I didn't know what I was looking at. I couldn't believe that I was actually seeing a gnome standing against the wall across from my bed. So I leaned in further, and he was still there. He did not disappear. And let me just remind you, I don't like sleeping in the dark in an empty house by myself. I am a scaredy cat. So the fact that I didn't jump up and run out of this room within seconds is still shocking to me to this day. Regardless, I sat there and watched him for a minute. It was probably more like 30 seconds, but it felt like 5 minutes. And then he just sort of faded back into the wall. Again, I'm still in bed. And in fact, I feel peaceful and comfortable. So I roll over and I'm like tucking myself in my blankets, and I look up, and above me are these twinkling green lights, like little sparks of lights. And again, instead of darting out of the house, I just cozy up and fall asleep. And in fact, I felt more comfortable and more secure at that point in the night than I did the entire time I was trying to fall asleep. Shortly after I had this experience, I was supposed to go with my father to a thing called the X Conference. And it was going to be a long drive, so we were in the car together for a while. And I really wanted to tell him about my gnome story, but at the same time, I thought he would either try to talk me out of it and tell me it was a dream, or just think I'm kind of nutty. And I didn't want to hear either of those things. So after a while, I just decided, I'm going to throw it out there and see what he says. Now, mind you, the X Conference is a convention based on alien contact and all kinds of unique, bizarre things. But for some reason in my head, I'm thinking, who sees a gnome in their bedroom? This sounds crazy. Nevertheless, I tell my father what happened, and surprisingly, his reaction is pretty, like mellow, kind of like, oh, that's weird. And that was it. And we went on with the drive and everything was fine. I kind of felt relieved because I didn't want him to talk me out of it or try to put logic. I didn't want any logic. I wasn't looking for logic. I just wanted somebody to hear my story. Anyway, if it's not strange enough to see a gnome, a shadow gnome in your room and then fall peacefully asleep, the really crazy part of the story happens next. What I didn't mention previously was that my father has actually written a book about the structures on Mars. So we were actually at this convention for him to sell these books. So once we got to the hotel where it was taking place, I went to go use the bathroom, and my father set up shop and took a seat behind the table. Well, when I came back from the bathroom, my father was as white as a ghost, and he said, "You're not going to believe what I just heard." And I said, "We're at an alien convention. I'm sure I can handle whatever it is you need to tell me." What he went on to say was that when he sat down at his table with his back to the vendor next to us, he overheard the woman talking about there being a rise in gnome sightings in people's bedrooms. A rise in gnome sightings in people's bedrooms. The woman that my father was vending next to, and she was a vendor as well, and this just happened to be where we were sitting. So of course I want to talk to this lady, so I get her attention. I'm telling her my story, and she's all ears. She wants me to draw out what the gnome looked like, and we had a whole conversation, and she actually had VHSs. Yes, VHSs. I am so aging myself here. So these VHSs had interviews that she did with people talking about their experience with seeing gnomes. And I had never heard of such a thing, but I was also a really cheap 21-year-old, and I didn't want to pay $30 for the VHS. So I never got to see what those interviews were, and I have looked online. I found a few things, but nothing really that fits my exact experience. Sometime after this convention, I actually went to a psychic to ask her what this might have all been about. And I was told that these gnome sightings tend to happen when a big life-changing event is going to occur. The interesting thing about that is during this convention I went to with my father, I met my husband. And we have been married now for 14 years. We have, as I said, 3 beautiful children. So I would say that that's a pretty big life-changing event. So there you have it. That's my paranormal story. If you were to tell me this story, I wouldn't believe it. So if you're skeptical, I totally understand. But I promise you, every word that came out of my mouth is true, and it still to this day completely baffles me. All right, but enough about me. Let's move on to the 4 amazing paranormal phenomenon stories that I have compiled for you from my Facebook family. I hope you enjoy them as much as I have, and thank you so much for listening to my story. And without further ado, here is my Facebook family paranormal phenomenon video series.
My story happened in the house I am in right now, upstairs on my computer, around 2 a.m. I was playing a video game, and I feel a tap on my shoulder, like a tugging, and I hear my name whispered in my ear, "Eric." So I turn around, and no one is there. and I'm sufficiently freaked out that it's time to go to bed. So I log off the computer and then go to bed. My wife is sleeping, and she was nowhere near me to tap my shoulder. The next morning, I wake up and I tell my wife the story about there being a tap on my shoulder and my name whispered in my ear, and she goes, "Yeah, that wasn't me." And I said, "Well, that's kind of funny how, your brain plays tricks on you, because I swore it happened." And then the phone rang, and it was my wife's cousin, and she was upset that a patient of hers, she worked in a nursing home, had passed on, and it was a wonderful young woman. And as she went on to describe the patient and her name, I realized it wasn't her patient per se, but my patient in a way. I'm a nurse, but before I became a nurse, I used to work at a nursing home. I took care of this young lady from the ages of 12 to 16 who I was close to. She will always be one of my favorite patients that I've ever cared for. She was lovely. She was a quadriplegic. She could communicate through blinking. And, back then I was young, and she let people know she kind of had a crush on me, which is fine. It's very sweet. And I just always enjoyed caring for her and trying to make her laugh. And she was my favorite, and I believe I was one of her favorites. And I find the coincidence of her passing on the same day that I heard someone say my name, tapped on the shoulder, interesting. And I wonder if it was her. She will always live in my heart. I think about her with some frequency, and I'm glad she's in a better place. So that's my story about dealing with the afterlife. Thank you.
I went with a bunch of friends of mine to Block Island, and we rented a house. We were drinking and partying, and it was the weirdest experience because there was a honky-tonk piano there, and it just turned into this huge swirl of us playing and singing and not knowing how much time passed. I started to notice different weird things happening. I was outside and there was a bee that kept coming around near the door, and I was like, that bee is annoying because I'm afraid of bees. Last time I got stung, my hand blew up, and I don't know if that means I'm allergic now, but I don't want to get bit again or stung again. So I said, that bee is just making it hard for me. I can't even get in the door. And as I said that, the bee landed on the doorknob. I'm not even kidding you. So finally someone came out the front door and I was able to go in. So I was the only person that did not have a significant other with me. So when I got there, the room that they decided to put me in, I'm sure was due to the fact that now I was alone. So it was kind of like a little crappy room. And as soon as I turned on the light bulb, or the light in the room, the light bulb burst. And I just got a really weird feeling. I was like, the bee didn't want me in the house. The light bulb burst. And things like that just kept happening. Somebody ended up falling asleep on the bed that I was supposed to be in. So next thing you know, I had nowhere to sleep. So I had to go sleep in some weird room where I kept hearing weird noises all night long. And I don't know, I just had a really weird feeling. So in the morning I got up and I was looking through the magazines, and they had a picture book that was about the house. And apparently the house had been used before. I guess on Block Island a long time ago, they used to have viewings of people before their funerals, and they would put them on the back porch. Because they were usually screened in porches that would keep them cool for the viewing before I guess they went off to the morgue. I'm not really sure, but it seemed like a long time ago. And it said that Fire Eyes, this is a ghost that supposedly would come and cause mischief to the people that were going to see the deceased. And sometimes people would look out and could see these little red glowing eyes in the back of the yard. And they couldn't tell whether or not they were coals or what they were, but it got the nickname of Fire Eyes. And one of its main things was poltergeist-like activity, you know, such as popping light bulbs and making doors. Oh yeah, I got stuck in the bathroom. I couldn't get out, and I was like, nobody could hear me either. It was really weird. It was like, I got stuck in the bathroom, so I guess doors get locked, and I don't know. For some reason, maybe it picked me because it knew that I could feel it more than most people. But that night felt like it was like 2 days long. And in the morning, I definitely was like, okay, it's beautiful here, but I'm ready to go. And I'm usually not like that, especially when I'm like in some beach town that I took a whole, you know, boat ferry ride to get to. It's like you want to relax, but it wasn't very relaxing. And the most recent experience is I went to Salem with my husband. I heard a dog growling in our room all night, and it was driving me nuts. I kept waking up and being like, what is happening? Like, am I crazy? I kept thinking it was my own dog, and then I was just like, you know, falling asleep thinking about it. And then once again, I read later on that the room we're in is the pet room. It's the only room that they're allowed to have pets in. It didn't smell like it or anything. They did a really good job because my husband would have been sneezing all night long. We had that issue before. So I don't know if it's still a pet room, but it was the person who used to own the house. It was their master, and they used to sleep there with their beloved dog. And I'm just wondering if that dog was just letting me know it was there.
I've got the prerequisites, slightly blurry images from the event. Here's my paranormal experience from 1978. While experimenting with psychedelics, LSD in this instance, I was able to use my mind and freeze some ants in place. It sounds a little strange, I know, but it was just starting to kick in, and I was in the kitchen and I saw an ant crossing the counter, and I felt all the attention. It was like a circle of all my attention just focused in on that ant, and the only thing that existed was that ant. And I thought, stop, and the ant stopped, and I was amazed. I thought, I need to get a picture of this because no one's going to believe me. Even myself, I wouldn't believe it unless I had some kind of picture of it. But my camera was not in that room, and I was afraid if I left, the ant would be able to get away. So whatever logic in my mind, I thought, if I draw ants around this ant, he'll think he's surrounded, and he won't be able to move until these other ants move. So I pulled out a pen and drew little ants, using this ant as my model, and tried to pretty much copy him on all sides of him. I've had the 4 ants done, and I looked, and the ant was still moving its front left leg. I thought, what? So I looked around, and I'd forgotten to draw that left leg on one of the ants. So I put that in, and the ant stopped moving. So I ran off, got my camera, came back, took a picture of the ant. And I managed to do this with 2 other ants. I don't remember what the sequence was of when I froze them and took the pictures. But I do have some not quite well-focused fuzzy pictures of the ants in place with the drawings around them. I went off, enjoyed the rest of my trip, came back many hours later, walked into the kitchen, and I saw one of the ants was still there. I immediately thought, I can't believe he's still there. And as I thought that, the ant ran away. It was like I broke the spell. So I suspect we all have like powers like this we can't normally access. It just is our shared reality is that these things don't exist.
When I was 17, I got into a car accident. That car accident changed my life in such a dramatic way. It changed my perception of reality. It changed my environment, and it ultimately changed the direction my life ultimately went in. All of us in the car were knocked out unconscious. I was the first one to come to, and immediately after that, I started noticing things about me that were changing. Like, I could go down into the city and I could walk past houses and I could feel this energy that I had never previously been able to feel. And along the discovery of, going to haunted houses and doing normal teenager things, that really kind of catapulted, I think, what was happening to me, and kind of did it warp speed, and exposed me to a lot of different spirits, otherworldly beings. I started experiencing shooting lights, like white sprints of lights. I would experience different deceased family members and people that I knew coming to me in my dreams to explain to me what was going on with me and what happened to me. And usually when people are close to me that pass over, they usually come to me in my dreams and let me know that they're crossing over. I would notice that there would be energies that would come into my room at night while I was sleeping, or they would wake me up. I have seen actual orbs float and manifest above my head or my bed. And this happened when I would share a room with my sister, and she was younger than I was. So she started to experience these things too, because I was experiencing them. So eventually, this is about at the age of 19 now, I've dealt with, sensing and seeing spirits for over a year. I went to my parents with my sister and I said, Mom, Dad, there's something really wrong with me. I go, I don't understand what happened to me, but since the car accident that I was in, I have been able to sense things that aren't normal. And my whole world of what I once knew was completely different and made no sense anymore. My parents looked concerned, and so my mom agreed to talk to some doctors and see what they had to say. They came back and they basically told her it was PTSD from my grandmother just dying, and I thought that was a load of, which really means that they didn't know what was going on with me, or that they couldn't give me a scientific explanation for it. Within a 2-week period of me first going to my parents, I had a situation happen as I was getting ready for school one morning. I was brushing my teeth, doing the most mundane thing ever, and I felt something staring at me. So I went and I looked, and as I looked from the ground up, and I saw feet. I saw my father's robe that he wears. And then when I got to the head, though, mind you, this was all physical until I got to the head. When I got to the head, it looked like this spirit was trying to focus so hard on pulling so much energy together that energy was trying to form, but yet it was moving almost like air or a mist and trying to create a solid form. And I knew inherently that it was taking a lot of energy for that spirit to manifest right there. And when I got to the face, there were these cut out incisions. It looked like cut out incisions. It almost looked like if you had a smoldering gun, and you burned out incisions, kind of like that, like a canal with dried blood, kind of. And I saw them from the orifices of all of the body's points. And I immediately gasped and I slammed the door shut, because at this point I had never really seen anything so physical and so solid and so undeniable. I went back to my parents and I said, I'm really scared because, since last time we talked, I go, this is what I saw. I go, I don't know what this is. And I said, let me draw you a picture. So I got out, a piece of paper, and I drew these incisions that I had seen. And I said, there's blood there. And, but it was too hard to make out the face because, it was energy kind of coming together enough for me to see that. And so my mom and my dad just stopped and they looked at each other, and I hear my father say, but she doesn't know. We never told anybody. And I go, don't know what? And they looked at each other again really weird, like they didn't know if they were going to tell me or not. I go, what aren't you telling me? And they said, well, when your uncle died, he hemorrhaged to death. And when he did that, he bled from all of those areas that you drew. And you're at the eyes and the nose and the mouth. He goes, that's what normally happens when you hemorrhage to death, but we just didn't say anything to anybody because we didn't feel like anyone should know. And I just sat there for a moment, realizing that my uncle, which is who it was, tried so hard to bring himself together to be able to show me something that my parents couldn't deny, because there's no way I could have known. So in that moment, my parents kind of processed this for themselves, realizing that I just held a key to something I could have never unlocked without them. And my uncle did that for a reason, and I feel like he did that so that it could validate to my parents that I wasn't crazy, and that to really pay attention to what I was saying.
Thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch, and if you would like to see more videos like this, please make sure to hit the subscribe button on YouTube, or go to my Facebook page, Ebony Amber, and hit the like button, or find me on Instagram under everything Ebony Amber and hit the follow button. If you want to be in one of these videos, send me a message and tell me a little bit about what your paranormal phenomenon experience was like. Alright guys, that's it for my first video, and just remember, the paranormal is my favorite kind of normal. So if you have any stories to share, please let me know.